Welcome to Reread. Today we're doing Children of the Jedi by Barbara Hambly. It's been a while and I loved it the first time. Do I still love it? First off, we're told that Cray and Nicos, which are some of Luke's first or second class of Jedi, I can't remember where they are. They're in the early classes here. Nicos has died. Technically his body's gone. But Cray is a master technician and has put together a clone body using Ciceruk technology, they say, and kind of captured Nicos' essence in a droid or android body. Now, here's the thing. At the end, I mean, spoilers here, but Nicos believes he is not human, or he's not Nicos. You know, the spirit of Nicos isn't in him. He's just a droid with really good, sensory behavior and human, programming. And Luke tends to agree, and at the end, Cray thinks so too. But very early in this, Nicos is told to call on the Force and conjure up memories and random projections, star charts and everything. And he does. So I want to say that everyone was wrong. It was really weird. It doesn't really make sense because at the very beginning, Nicos is doing what I think is something a Jedi would do. And, the Jedi would be captured and force essence into a machine. That's already been established from Truce Bakura. So we know that technology exists and that Cray has found some way to, make it backwards compatible to, instead of just into a machine, fill into a human body. That makes sense too. And they lead you to believe that really is Nicos, but at the end they don't. Now it's sad because this is a book of missed opportunities now that I look at it. I wish they would have done more with Nicos. When he is captured, when Luke and all of them go upon the Eye of Palpatine, Nicos has put a restraining bolt on, which just kind of proves to everyone he's a droid because he can't do anything. He can't help Cray, even though he wants to, but that restraining bolt is stopping him. And that's how Cray realizes, oh, Nicos is just a droid after all. He doesn't have the Force. He never did. I kind of knew that. I was lying to myself. And Luke's like, yeah, you were kind of lying to yourself. Why would Luke be a jerk? Why even go with this charade so long? I don't know. I don't know. That was a question, especially when Luke calls on Nicos to do those random coordinates to kind of pinpoint what eventually would lead them to the Eye of Palpatine. Now on Ithor, Han encounters an old, I guess, a smuggler named Drug McCrub, I think is his name. It's kind of a silly name now. I forgot how silly the name was. But he's warning, yet killing. It was saying he's going to kill Han Solo, but warning him about the Children of the Jedi. Another little problem I have with this book, it shouldn't be called Children of the Jedi. Han's story is really boring and goes nowhere. There was some fun times. I remember one scene clearly when they're being chased by these Kretch or whatever, these like little creepy crawly demon looking aliens, and they're trying to run out of the tunnel, and I think they get blasted out by some water out of a spout and get kind of blasted up in the air, fall to the ground, and they're kind of just laying on their backs and they look at each other and Han goes, buddy, we're getting too old for this. And Han roars in agreement. I thought that was funny. Still a fun scene. But to be honest, wow, they didn't really do that much. In fact, the Children of the Jedi kind of get mentioned, but you're never really, I don't know, the book doesn't make it crystal clear if we know who they are, if we know where they are. It just kind of, I don't know why that was the title of it. They should have just called it The Eye of Palpatine. Honestly, because that's the one story you remember the most. Leia's storyline is, I mean, she is chief of state, but she's not caught up in a political thing or being an ambassador for somewhere or representing the New Republic, which is refreshing. She's going on an actual, honest-to-goodness adventure where she recognizes Raganda as one of the Emperor's concubines. She gets to meet Eric. She gets captured by them and then escapes. And then, of course, Eric is an interesting character because I forgot how evil this kid was. I thought Raganda was the, kind of like the godmother pulling the strings. I knew that she was prepping him to be the next emperor. He was just too young right now, which is why they explain why she didn't appear before Thrawn and whoever else, why she'd been biding her time, because she's waiting for Eric to grow up. Now, for 1 second, Leia entertains that Eric is Palpatine's son, but immediately throws that away, and then the book doubles down and says, yes, he is not related to the Emperor. So that's good that they squashed that rumor immediately after bringing it up, after bringing the thought up. But Eric is happy to be the villain here. He controls droids with his the mechanism in his brain, He's controlling the Eye of Palpatine, which they know about. Raganda knew about. Mara Jade did not know. Which means, and this also makes sense, that there was another hand of the Emperor. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Raganda doesn't seem as fully trained as Mara does. Mara's pissed when she finds out there's another hand. Oh, and how does she find out there's another hand? When she's going out on a date with Lando. Yeah, that's in it, because when Han calls him up, she's all gussied up, like to go out, and Lando gets into the holo projector. He's wearing his finest too, because they're about to go out together. But no, we're told later on they were just going undercover. Oh, you bet they were going undercover. I still love Lando Mara. Hashtag Larendo. That didn't work. Anyway, Eric is doing mean things to droids, making them go against their programming. He's controlling R2-D2, who tries to kill Han and Leia at first, and they don't know why, but then after rerouting his, I can't remember, some type of circuit, which Eric thinks is impossible to do, and then finds out because he can't control R2 anymore. And then, of course, the Eye of Palpatine is getting rewired because Callista's essence is in there, so he can't call on the Eye of Palpatine. Things go south quick for Raganda and Eric. They abandon ship and disappear. And another thing that I knew this one, but forgot to mention it probably in my first review, it's kind of weird. Barbara Hambly knew at this point she was probably coming back to write another novel, and she didn't bring them back. That always bothered me. Now, of course, we're going to get to hear their story, which is awesome. They're ending way later. But why create characters, put them on a cliffhanger, knowing you're going to wrap up this, third book in the Callista trilogy? Why not bring them back and finish off their story? Yeah, it's just kind of weird that she kind of left it out there, because another hand of the Emperor is very interesting, and readers would probably want to know more about them. Eric's an interesting character for a villain, an Emperor born to be, but yet he's not there yet. He still is a child in a way and throws fits and stuff. Raganda, again, her character's not very well fleshed out. She's trying to, raise her son, but she's not portrayed as, she is kind of, I guess, evil, but she's not portrayed as that way or that much. In fact, the roles were split. The first time reading this, I just forgot. I thought Raganda was the evil one and, was just corrupting young Eric. And Eric didn't know better. But now it looks like Eric's taking control and Raganda's just holding on for dear life that, she can, stay there and help him out rise to Emperor. This actually, the way it's written in Children of the Jedi, plays out perfectly what you will see in New Jedi Order. So for that reason, whoever wrote New Jedi Order really wrote a great compliment to this book. But again, wasn't Barbara Hambly supposed to do something to these characters? And if so, what? Next, I want to talk about Luke's story, where he and Nicos and Cray are going to, they discover the Eye of Palpatine. They discover an old stormtrooper named Triv who kind of tells them about the Eye of Palpatine, its purpose, and that it's 30 years old. Whoops. Okay, now, yes, the Supreme Counselor Palpatine was around back then. The Clone Wars hadn't started officially, but again, this is George Lucas's fault. He had predated the Clone Wars way farther back than they wanted to, and everyone in Bantam was instructed that the Clone Wars took place way later. So in that old timeline, this kind of makes sense, that the Eye of Palpatine was constructed, during, or I should say after the Clone Wars, when he was the Emperor. But due to George Lucas's ever-changing timeline, now it looks like it was 30 years. How could he have constructed something? I'm not worried about that. Just like I forgave it for iJedi, I'm going to forgive it here for Barbara Hambly and not really call it a contradiction, because it came straight from George Lucas, the timeline, which he later on changed. But, Luke gets on there, they wreck on the ship, and Luke is just beat up. This was the Luke problem I told you about that Bantam discovered they had, because he was so powerful in Dark Empire. How do you tone him down? Well, Barbara Hambly's first answer was just to beat him up. And he is like, it says that, he's got a gash over his head and he's just bleeding and the head's throbbing, and whenever he talks, it feels like someone's drilling inside of his neck or whatever, because everything hurts. And we're told how much, later on he breaks his leg, and it's just crippling to him. He's just in so much pain. He's trying to keep himself together. He's exerting himself and using the Force and levitating down elevator shafts and trying to get away from sand people and crazy brainwashed aliens, which is actually kind of fun. But the thing is, though, he's just using so much of the Force, and he's just burning himself out. And 3PO wants him to rest, but he knows he can't. He's got to keep pushing on with this mission to kind of get them out of the situation. I'll buy it. I'll buy it. But you talk about Troy Denning, torturing characters. Barbara Hambly tortures Luke in this one. I mean, he is beat up the whole way through. That's another thing I did like about this book. 3PO is, for once, teamed up with Luke. We don't see that much. It's usually Luke and R2, 3PO and Leia, or 3PO and Han. That's how it's always been. But Barbara Hambly, very early, I guess, said, hey, I'm going to team 3PO with Luke. And I liked that. I liked the interactions that Luke had with 3PO, how 3PO could help. In fact, the Eye of Palpatine story, to me, seemed to be the main story. I didn't care about the Children of the Jedi. I cared about the Eye of Palpatine. The Eye of Palpatine in itself is a pretty good idea, too. Of course, the Emperor would have wheels within wheels of plans, devious plans. And that Callista, a long time ago, came across this plan. Obviously, he would have been the Emperor at this point, but that she sacrifices herself, downloads her essence. Now, chronologically, we already know that she can do this, but she downloads her essence into the Eye of Palpatine to kind of screw up what's called the will. And that all makes sense, too. Now, what about Luke and Callista? What about does their love mean something? In a way, yes. Luke is pining for the old Jays, the old Jedi, wanting someone there to kind of help guide him along who can teach him something. Callista is that person. Now, there is a weird dream sequence Luke has as he's finally gets some sleep, that the ghost of Callista comes and they kind of cuddle in his dreams. Yep, that was weird, but it happened, and oh well, that's okay. Either way, though, she likes Luke. Luke has fallen in love with her. It is a hopeless love, which is what Luke is all about, right? And as the reader at this time, everyone was hoping Luke would settle down with someone. Yes, fans wanted Mara Jade. I did not want Mara Jade. I wanted anyone but Mara Jade. I accept this. Now, at the end, of course, Luke gets stunned. He gets stun blasted. Like, how did they stun blast Luke? How did he not stop that? Well, he saw the stun gun come out, and he was just worn out by this time, and he didn't have the force to stop it. I buy that. I buy that. Krey and Nicos are underutilized in the storyline, but that Krey would give up her body for Callista makes sense too. In fact, Callista even says, I didn't want to do it. It was Krey's idea. She went, no, I want to be with Nicos. And they didn't even know if it would work. She said, I don't even think this will work, but if you can jump your essence into me, like the Emperor was going to do with Anakin in Dark Empire. Like I said, all this stuff has been, it wasn't that Barbara Hambly was coming up with some, half-cracked idea about jumping into Force essence and everything. This stuff had already been established within the expanded universe. She was just going with it and saying, okay, I'll jump into your body. And as she pops up, and this is the one I hear from everyone, oh, wasn't it creepy that, he didn't look at Callista that way, even though she's, a hot blonde, according to Han Solo. But now that she's Callista, he's like, oh, yeah, let's get it on, baby. No, it's not, because it says that she's physically different. In fact, when they open up the escape pod, as she makes it out, they blow up the Eye of Palpatine. Luke thinks, oh, Callista did want to live. And then he opens up, it's like, no, not Callista, I'm sorry, Krey wants to live. When he opens up, he realizes, this is not Krey from the very beginning. Her hair is different. Her eyes, they're gray. Oh no. Her nose, her bone structure. Now, we've never seen someone jump into another. We didn't know would Anakin had looked differently if the Emperor's presence had been in him. Possibly, but we never know. We never got around to it. So the thing is, that this could happen. Yeah, it could. But a very interesting thing happens when she cannot access the Force. And she does agree to go to Yavin 4 with Luke to help train for right now. And the story's going to pick right up in the next novel. But I don't mind this. In fact, Meg from Meg Reviews, I'll give her a nod here. She came up with an interesting theory that, hey, the Force didn't like that, which is why she was cut off from the Force. The Force goes, that's a little unnatural. Jedi should pass on. They shouldn't be living like this and forever. And I actually love that idea when you think about it. Would the Emperor have lost his connection to the Force if he had entered a Force user like Anakin? Just because it made sense to the Emperor doesn't mean it would have worked. Now, it's an interesting concept to think about, really, when you think about So Children of the Jedi has a lot of redeeming qualities. I still like the book. Not as good as the first time. I agree with some people that's not the best. But it does bring up an interesting subject here. Would the Emperor have lost his powers if he had jumped in Anakin? Then he would have been useless. Of course, Anakin would have been dead and gone, which would have been sad, made a lot of people sad. But he was a baby back then. No one cared about him. And as fans would go, But you go through that and you think, wow, could this have happened? And here's a missed opportunity. No one in the New Jedi Order or anywhere else in the Del Rey era thought about mentioning that. How the Emperor could have been rendered powerless either way. The Emperor was going to die in Empire's End. Either way, it was a no-win situation for him. He was in his last clone body and everything. I started thinking about that, and that is interesting. I am excited to read the next novel, but for Children of the Jedi, I do have to say this. It's all right. It's all right. Not the best of the Bantam books at all. And, of course, I like it a little less. But at this point, I'm still willing to give Luke and Callista a try. Mara is too. She didn't seem miffed when she saw Callista there instead of Cray. Remember, she's going out and dating Lando at the time, so what complaints would you have? But I am interested to see how the rest of this trilogy, Callista trilogy, ends, and I can give my final thoughts. But I'll do that next time.